before they train. Investigations by the Sunday Standard have found a huge contrast between what happens when in public clam and what really goes on between the shiny surface when the Chinese masters of the SGR retire to their apartments and restaurants. And at this point, I'd like to bring in COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for speaking to us on News Center this morning. First of all, looking at that expose by the Standard Investigative Team as the COTU Secretary General, has this been brought to your attention before?
No, this had not been brought to our attention, even to our affiliate trade union, which is Kenya Union of Railway Workers, until recently when we read it in the newspapers, particularly well covered by the Standard newspaper. These things we anticipated they will happen because from the word go, this SGR was a repo for Kenyan taxpayers' money. It was not properly structured, and in any case, as such a huge project, Kenyans would have had a prior training in China as per how they will have to handle it. And something went amiss somewhere with those people who are in charge of that project. They were in a hurry, they were in a hurry of making money, and in the whole process, they made a lot of mistake. Because it is not the duty of the registered trade unions only to protect Kenyan workers. It is the responsibility of the Interior Ministry, which is in charge of the immigration, and also the parent Ministry of Labor, and the minister himself is supposed to be in charge to see that no any investor in this country plays or applies unfair labor practices, such as those ones I'm hearing from SGR workers. A worker is protected in this country by law. Even if he or she is not a member of a trade union, we have elaborate industrial relations machinery in this country, including the well-established labor relations courts. And nobody can just come up with his own laws to intimidate and apply indirect slavery such as the one being practiced by Chinese. And let me tell you, I do coordinate at the international level, I coordinate Africa and Asia. And all the time I go to China, I campaigned for the Chinese, all Chinese Trade Union Federation to be allowed at the International Trade Union Confederation so that they can be members of the International Labour Organization governing body. It was not easy, and we had to explain. In China, anybody who is, once you get a job in China, you automatically become a member of a trade union. That is the social partners agreement. Government, employers in China and workers in China. It's automatic that you will be a member of a trade union and a member of their Communist Party. I don't understand why the Chinese investors in Africa should apply indirect slavery. It is the highest time now the minister and the Labour Commissioner should directly intervene. And the Labour Commissioner has prosecution powers. He can prosecute. He's in the laws allows him to prosecute such unfair employers or employers who are applying unfair labor practices or who are exploiting workers and who don't want to put better terms and conditions of service in place as reflected in our statutes. The Labour Commissioner is empowered to take such employer to court without referring to anybody else. And I can't see why, since it was unearthed and well covered by the Standard, if it were in other places or if the Minister of Labour was effectively working, I think the labor officers and the Labour Commissioner and the police too would have reined in to see who is in charge of HR in SGR, and this person would have been taken to court for applying unfair practice. For example, you cannot stand up or wake up at the wrong side of your bed and you order your fellow man to lie on his or stomach or on her stomach or on Otherwise, you can't intimidate a person like that. It's unfair. It's a crude way of doing things. It's uncouth and it's very primitive. And we don't have, after so many years of independence and after refurbishing, doing away with archaic labor laws, colonial labor laws, that somebody in this era can stand up and intimidate Kenyan workers. So we at COTU, when we had this, we have written to the Ministry of Labor, and we have also written to His Excellency the President, trying to highlight what these people, the unfair labor practices being practiced by the Chinese. We were told that they will be able to train manpower. We were told that the whole SGR will be manned by Kenyans, and it is surprising that up to date, those few Kenyans who are there have been dismissed. They have 2 canteens applying racism, open racism, and in their own canteen an African can't have a cup of tea. And Chinese, 30 years ago, they were more poorer than we are. We were ahead of them. They should respect us. And if that is the case, then we are appealing. We have asked His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, to intervene and make sure that that is his flagship project. Those people follow the due process of the law, and they respect Kenyans. They allow those workers to be unionized.
Because when you look at that investigative piece, you listen to the stories of Kenyans being underpaid, and you did mention that there was an agreement that Kenyans are going to be trained. And looking at that investigative piece, so you have Kenyans working, they get dismissed for no apparent reason, they're replaced by Chinese. You have scenarios where all the instructions within the SGR are in Chinese. So you're a Kenyan, you're working in Kenya, but the instructions are in Chinese. You're not allowed to drive in the same car with Chinese counterparts. You cannot even share seating space within the cafeteria. I mean, this doesn't augur well for the Kenyan workers and indeed COTU.
Linda, what I can't understand is what agreement did our Kenya government enter into between the government and the Chinese investors, or with the Chinese government, or with the bank that did give us money to put up SGR. I have not seen that agreement. I don't know whether that agreement was private to the Ministry of Labor or any other social partner, other Kenyan Federation of Kenya Employers. With us, we didn't see that agreement. In that agreement, I think there is a place which, or a provision in that agreement which spells out the terms and conditions of workers and how they will be hiring workers. It cannot just go on and go on and go on like that, that Chinese have invested here. We are paying billions and billions of money monthly, and they will still be in charge controlling a worker. They want to control everything. They are applying open racism. They see us as if we are people who cannot do anything. In any case, I have gone to, if you go to Addis Ababa, and I said this yesterday, you see the type of the trains that are there, not this type of these old junks, things using diesel. No more modern railway nowadays you have diesel engines. And you go to China itself, you go in Shanghai, they don't use it such. Those are old things that they used about 50 years ago. And then we have accepted them. And we are proud of going public telling Kenyans that one of our important projects that we did in place under Jubilee government was SGR. When your brothers and sisters are languishing in poverty, they are underpaid, they are maimed, they are given jobs that even a slave cannot do such a job in a free and independent country like Kenya. So I want the Minister of Labor, and we have written to the Minister of Labor, we want to get a report from the Labor Commissioner and the Minister himself. The Minister should not sit at Block A at the NSSF and look at NSSF as if it is the Minister of Labor. The Minister of Labor is bigger than the NSSF docket, and workers are in various places. We don't have labor inspectors. We don't have factory inspectors. Our people sometimes are locked up in factories, and it is because the Minister of Labor, sometimes it's not properly funded. And the government should look into this area very seriously. And as I've said, it is not only the duty of the trade unions to protect and defend workers. We do so with the support of the government. The government provides an enabling environment which makes workers join the trade union. If you leave a dictatorial employer like those in SGR, those Chinese, they would not allow those workers to join their union. And this is a constitutional right as it is reflected in Article 41 of our Constitution, that every worker has a right to join a union or an organization of his or her own choice. And two, collective bargaining agreement is a constitutional issue. You must enter into a contract between you and your employer. It's a constitutional issue, and no employer can run away from it. And this is why I'm saying the government must come in and see into it that those laws are followed to the latter, because it is only Kenya which has, and our South Africa and other few African countries, Ghana, for example, we have elaborated industrial relations machinery to be followed. And when somebody hears that this is the place where Chinese can come and exploit a worker right and left, and there is we have a very articulate and ardent trade union movement in this country, and we have people who went to school in various places, including in the ministries, and we have a working Federation of Kenya employers, and then the government cannot also enforce these laws and rules and make sure that their citizens, besides being workers, are properly protected. I heard that worker saying that when they reported to a senior management in railways, they said that if you are not happy, go where you came from. That is foolish, because that shows how we have lost patriotism, particularly being Kenyans. If you are a patriotic Kenyan, you should investigate and work out on a report. And I want also to challenge our workers who are being employed there. Quietly look for where your union is without those Chinese knowing. Give us a full report. Come to the Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU, go to the Union of Railways, enter into any union. We have put billboards everywhere that to join a trade union for protection of your job. You need to protect your job. Come and report to us. We will take action. If you are not a member, we have lawyers in our organization. We will hire a lawyer, and a lawyer will move to court immediately to protect workers' rights. We have now informed the ministry. We have informed the Office of the President. If the action is not taken, court is going to come in, and we will make sure that those people conform into to our labor laws. And next month, I will be meeting Chinese in Geneva, and I'm going to ask the topmost leaders of Chinese labor movement. I'm going also to express this to them, and we have worked together with them, and I'm sure the old Chinese Federation of Trade Union will be able to take up this matter with their government back at home. And I remember vividly when there is a company here called Jiangxi, which did a short job at NSSF. When I reported this company to China, the man who was in charge of this company ran away from Kenya. He's no longer in Kenya. He left his company behind, because in China, once you are heard that you went somewhere and you gotten yourself involved in corruption, the penalty is death. But when they come outside here, they become corrupt. They do things that they cannot do back in their own country. So, Sister Linda, you can take it from me that this is an issue COTU is not going to relent. We are going to take it up with the authorities concerned both in Kenya and in China.
And that's a good place to end this conversation. Francis Atwoli, COTU Secretary General, thank you so much for speaking.